Thanks for letting me speak out against this project. I appreciate it very much. My name is Ed Buzzell, and I'm a resident of Moxie Gore, and I own property in the ward. I just want to make it absolutely clear that Western Mountains and Rivers Corporation does not speak for me and many other good people in this area. My grandson and I enjoy the wild and pristine areas affected by this project. We recently explored the Enchanted Forest all the way to Beatty and the Canadian border. We also boated the lower half of the Kennebec Gorge with our dog Rivers. After eating lunch at the proposed transmission line crossing, we concluded that you could not find a worse place to cross the Kennebec Gorge if you tried. This is a picture of the Kennebec Gorge and the crossing, and my grandson. Fragmenting the Enchanted Forest, destroying wildlife habitat, and spraying herbicides on the largest undeveloped forest in the world should be considered a crime. This project would damage Maine's most precious tourist draws. I feel very lucky that I can share with my grandson these areas as they are now. I wonder what my great-grandson will see. And all for what? So Maine can become an extension cord for Massachusetts. CMP stands to make $2.5 billion pure profit over the 40-year contract. What will the people of Maine get? We will damage our valuable Enchanted Forest and the Kennebec Gorge for the price of a cup of coffee and a donut per month. And it's questionable we'll not even have to pay for the donut. Massachusetts wants clean power and willing to pay $16 billion for what they consider to be clean power. Imagine if this money was put to good use on renewable energy projects in the United States instead of Canada. If this project goes through, we will replace Saudi Arabian oil with new foreign power interests. CMP is willing to make Maine brown so it can meet its own quick, rich goals. It's questionable that this power is even clean, as Quebec Hydro can legally send fossil fuel power to other states such as New York to make up for the energy loss of sending clean power to Massachusetts. This project will only bring temporary jobs to Maine. It'll lock up the power grid, discourage new Maine clean renewable energy projects such as offshore wind and solar. And these are the types of projects that will bring long-lasting jobs to Maine's economy. The good people of Lewiston are expecting a $5 million tax break on this project. I read in the newspaper that just a few weeks ago, Avangrid applied for a 97% tax reduction on its Flat Rock Wind project in New York. If history is to be repeated, the Lewiston tax incentive could drop from $5 million to only a few $100,000 in a few years. Maine is guaranteed that our tourism economy will not go away with the tax abatement. Maine does not want or need this project. This is a bad deal for Maine. We need a power company that cares about Maine enough to invest in renewable power and long-lasting jobs for Maine people. Not one we question the ability to even keep our rates accurate or to keep our lights on. I, for one, do not want to have a foreign power with a finger on the light switch for the whole New England power grid. And I'd like to end it with that, and I do have some evidence about this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Julie Tibbetts. Oh.
Randy, Chris, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Julie Tibbetts. I am an 18-year ref guide, a resident of Otisfield, Maine, and a one-time resident here in the Forks for 5 beautiful, lovely years, a long time ago. Most of my points have already been covered, so I'm going to be very succinct here. I offer my vehement rejection of the CMP proposal for the Quebec-Mass corridor. Environmental. This project does not add renewable energy to the region. It merely reallocates hydropower from one place to another. That added draw to the grid could be fulfilled, as many of others said, by different non-green sources of energy. Occupational. The 1,700 promised jobs are not promised to Mainers. Similar projects always bring in experts from away, and I do not believe CMP and Hydro-Quebec will utilize locals as employees except in minimum wage and/or short-term jobs. Transparency. Hydro-Quebec has not been to any of these local meetings. They have not answered our questions. I'm concerned they are hiding something. Wildlife and wetlands has been spoken to already many times this evening. I'm not an expert on either, but the Natural Resources Council of Maine and the Sierra Club are. Both of them have concerns about the irreparable damage that this new corridor would bring to our vernal ponds, to our trout streams, to our deer shelter and feeding areas, golden eagle habitats, and the air quality. Health. I do have somewhat of an expertise in health. I'm a 25-year medical technologist specializing in oncology and hematology. The ill effects of living under high-tension power lines is still debatable. But both the WHO and the CDC acknowledge that increased electromagnetic fields increases the risk of heart rates, arrhythmias, biorhythms, stunted growth, infertility, fatigue, rashes, anxiety, and cancer. Why should the residents of Maine have to shoulder the added health benefit or added health burden to provide a power benefit to residents of Massachusetts? Tourism. The partnership with Western Mountains and Rivers Corporation does not accurately represent the beliefs and requests of the majority of the residents and tour guides here in the Forks area. Some guides, even those employed by the founding members of this corporation, reject this proposal and feel betrayed by the partnership. Wilderness. There are a few areas left with this pristine and untouched wilderness that we have here. This corridor will carve and gut that. And finally, historically, New Hampshire recently rejected a similar proposal. Our western neighbors researched and vetted this well. Let's learn from their diligence and follow in the same direction. Thank you very much.
Next up is Kevin Ross.
Is this someone's notebook?
Hey, Ed.
It's a nice notebook.
Yeah, it's a cool sticker.
It says your name on it too. My name's Kevin Ross, and I can say I'm one of the youngest residents of the West Forks at the prime age of 33. I've been coming to this community for 7 years as a registered Maine whitewater guide. And I came here for several reasons. One was the river. That was the first thing that called me here. And then not being on the river, I discovered the woods and the mountains. And that's something that drew me here. And then I noticed the community here. We're a small community, but we're a strong community. We're a helpful community, and we have a big connection to the wilderness. As a registered Maine guide, I get to be a part of an association that is 121 years old. That's registered Maine guides. We were put in here to be stewards of the wilderness, to show people the wilderness, and to protect the wilderness. We've talked a lot about the wilderness up here. A lot of people have said some great key points. So I'm going to focus on some other things that haven't been said. One thing is the Appalachian Trail. It is one of the most sought out trails in the world to hike. It comes right through this area, bringing people from all over the world. Another one is the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. It is an old Native American canoe route from New York City to Fort Kent, Maine. It just got reestablished, and it's a canoe trail I would love to do. Just need to convince my girlfriend to take 3 months off. Another point that hasn't been hit on yet is that this is a scenic highway. One of few in America that have a scenic highway that will be impacted by these power lines. Another historic thing is the Bow Trail up on the Moose River, something that groups of kids are shown the wilderness every time. So really, I am against this project. For many reasons that I've said, many reasons that other people have said here today. I do believe, beautiful places in Maine and in this world do not need to be put into a national monument or preserved or anything like that for it to be protected and to be viewed and appreciated by all people. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna say.
Robert Hayes.
Thank you. Is there more after me, or any at the time I could just submit this?
No, we've got 2 more sheets after that.
2 more sheets. I'll be brief. This is actually, the audience here was Boston Public Utilities Commission. If you would rather have that direct, I can give you the testimony and skip a spot, or I can read. I'll leave it up to the group. Read or sit down?
Read it.
Read it.
You're a good speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming up. Went down to Boston, had a great trip. Nice seeing the big town. When I spoke, I was speaking as an abutter to the project, and I'm also the coordinator for the Old Canada Road National Scenic Byway. And since this was presented in Boston, the directors have adopted it as their thoughts as well. It's backed up from where most of us are talking now. Most of us are speaking right here, our impacts to Maine. And this was like, how come Massachusetts didn't take the hint and say, maybe we ought to redirect our request and go another route instead of looking for hydro again? So that's where it came from. Dear Commissioners, I'm a zoning forester working for 30 years in the region of Maine. Planned to be bisected by the proposed 15-mile utility line from northern Quebec. I have serious concerns over the ultimate utility of the project to New England for a number of reasons. They include job loss in all of New England, suppression of renewable electric projects, supply security, environmental damage to both countries, grounded ethical concern, scenic compromise, and lastly, the perceived fast-tracking of the project. Scenic values. Maine tourism is propelled by scenery, whether it is on the coast or in the unbroken managed woodlands. Visitors come to see the relaxing landscape unavailable in their home areas. Most of this proposed 2,000-acre clear cut, and I'll clarify that. What's in the application is 150 feet wide, with the other half that might be used someday for another line. It's very hard for DEP not to approve a section of wetland adjacent to a permitted section. It just wouldn't happen. So this should slide through very easily. This entire 300 feet width will be maintained as scrub-shrub habitat by as yet unknown means. The monopole design selected by Evangrid minimizes structure size, but the height, averaging 95 feet, is a tad excessive, as Maine trees do not grow tall enough to create an outage issue. This also means the poles will be even easier to see sticking up higher than the surrounding vegetation. Environmental impacts are less with fewer poles as distance is longer between them, which is good. An unfortunate issue is that Evangrid has no control over the view. Should they clear the 300 feet, the industrial forest landowner next to them can clear to the line. Now you've got a pole line and cornfield. There is no buffer. If the trees are not removed, then only portions of the line will be seen in summer. Then at the end of the summer, the leaves fall, unveiling the monstrous extension cord. Winter is the next busiest season in our area, with ice fishing, snowmobiling, and cross-country skiing. Travel by snowmobile would never be without the site of the proposed transmission line. The permit application is for one utility line. It will occupy the 150 feet, and we've gone through what may happen on the rest of it. Whether it would be for another Hydro-Quebec power line to move more energy, or for wind turbines, we do not know. It may go north to Quebec. What we do know is that once approved, the parallel one becomes very easy to approve, and in essence, we are improving the entire corridor. Jobs in New England. This region is powered by a number of sources from a variety of businesses and entrepreneurs. Small gas plants, biomass, solar farms, wind power generators, as well as traditional oil, water, and nuclear. Some older generators will be shutting down for a number of reasons, and a new source needs to replace their capacity. And again, the audience was Massachusetts, and they have a couple nukes that are on their way out, so they need to replace the power. Sensible. Buying from Canada will eliminate the opportunity for U.S. business to participate in that replacement. The subsidized cost of the 1,200 megawatts will force many current generators out of the market. When those small generators are gone, I suspect we will see a price increase from this new source. I would rather see my neighbors employed than save a nickel on the power bill. Having this 1,200 megawatt elephant in the market will stifle new clean electric generation and ensure dependence on Canada and Spain for electricity. This is totally opposite of the Massachusetts license logo, Spirit of America. And I hope those in this room, that's you guys, will not allow these three words to be severely tarnished as fruition of this project will ensure. New England-based renewable supply. Electricity is a life necessity these days. Responsible technology has grown in the last decade that allows it to be produced from a variety of clean sources. It is not always as economical as some old sources, but in the long run, considering environmental benefit, it is much cheaper. Cost of solar and wind-based renewables have come down, just as witnessed by the recent Martha's Vineyard quote on offshore wind. Simultaneously, energy-efficient appliances have allowed less consumption, balancing monthly household costs. The recent quote from Martha's Vineyard wind project proves that point. The shadow in the closet, however, is weather. Hydro is constant and not dependent on wind or sun. Hydro-Quebec has stated that it wants to be the battery for New England. Years ago, that was the only option. Now emerging household batteries, designed to charge at periods of low use and make grid power available in times of increased demand, are on the cusp of realization. Where is the logic in slicing through 53 miles of unfragmented forest and widening 92 miles to import a product we can make in our own backyards? Power from Hydro-Quebec is already delivered through New York State, Maine, and through New Brunswick and Vermont. One reason stands out: money. Utility companies seem to change hands frequently. Who will own a Vanguard next? Russia? Environmental damage to both countries. 2/3 of the proposed project is located on existing or to be widened infrastructure. The 53 miles I spoke of is through an untracked, except for traditional uses, woodland. This scar would be 300 feet wide and goes over the sides of mountains with long, unbroken straightaways. Central Maine Power's proposed line will divide what is Maine, and part of the reason for our large tourism economy. Our wildlife does not need this new window on the world. Permits still need to be issued in Maine to allow construction. How can we permit a project that we would not allow to be built? And then there's a little reference to the Hydro-Quebec stories from long ago, 84, 92, and 05, regarding drowned caribou through flooding. And Hydro-Quebec biologists are diligent work to determine the safe level of human fish ingestion due to mercury release from flooding. And this happens when you flood anything. It's in the ground, it comes up. They say by 2020, it'll reach a peak, if nothing else is flooded. Where does it go? When questions are the source of this 1,200 megawatts, CMP has offered a couple of different stories. One, it is coming from Ontario and New York, and the other is that it's coming from new flooding and upgrade of the Hydro-Quebec turbines. In order to determine if the purported 265,000 tons of carbon reduction, which CMP published, is anywhere near accurate, we need to know and not just take their word for it. And reference to a couple internet articles that you can take a look at. Please take the time to read the articles. Although dated, they bring up the same questions we're asking today, and those were asked by the governor of New York. Where's this stuff coming from? It's a great volume. It's coming through a wire. It's done. It's a done deal. Although the articles are dated, they come up with the same questions. If the articles were included in the monthly power bill that the Massachusetts ratepayers receive, anxious to pay a premium for green power, I don't think they would be so inclined. Ethics. This topic is rarely listed as a government concern, but Why is it okay to purchase a product from another country that we by legislation have not allowed in our own due to environmental and aesthetic concerns? Why the double standard? And why is Maine being asked by Massachusetts to be complicit in the increased environmental devastation? Shame on both states for this. Fast track. New Hampshire spent over 10 years to defeat a similar proposal. Maine is looking for less than a year. In fact, Central Maine Power bought the corridor before the contract opportunity was available. The reason is clearly to tie up the demand for energy and to be the responsible party to deliver it. Major money is at stake for the two players, Central Maine Power and Hydro-Quebec. New York analysts came up with the figure of 60 million. I've got no clue if that's true, but I haven't seen any data to disprove it. This is a major incentive to get this project done soon. This is profit. And again, the audience was Massachusetts folks. Money that Massachusetts is not spending on a product that could be invested in their own infrastructure. Incentive for Hydro-Quebec may be in the same range, money-wise, as they've stated that they want to be the battery for New England. I suggest they energize all of Canada first. Clearly, there's no power crisis in New England. Otherwise, electrons would be flowing under Lake Champlain, as the cost would be no barrier in desperate times. The only reason for rapidly pursuing the project is to ensure Spain and Canada are not excluded from the profit. I apologize for referring to Central Maine Power so many times, when more accurately it is Avangrid. And Avangrid, if you break down the name, it's advance, the head of, in front of, kind of like the forward-thinking business. We're going back 100 years here for hydropower. The public has a more comfortable perception of a New England company than a very large Spanish company, and project proponents have chosen to continue to use the name of a New England-rooted company. In conclusion, I ask this department, PUC in this case, reconsider the request to have Maine be involved in this rush to tie up a portion of the New England power supply, ensuring Spain is responsible for a New England necessity. Withdrawing entertainment of the NECEC proposal will ensure New England is responsible for its own power destination. Many will say the boat has already sailed and its course cannot be altered. Please take hold of the rudder, return to safe port, and live the slogan, Spirit of America. With all respect for your considerations, Robert Haynes. Thank you for your time.
Howard Trotsky.
Commissioner Wren, Commissioner Davis, and other members here. My name is Howard Trotsky. I was Republican Senate Chairman of the Joint Standing Committee on Public Utilities in the 110th Maine Legislature. And one of the bills that was of extreme interest to me was, well, it comes afterward. Two Republican legislators were taken out to dinner by CMP, and I don't know why we were being asked to go out, but they wanted to discuss something very important. What they wanted to discuss, I found out later, was they were proposing a bill to put Central Maine Power Company into other businesses besides generating and distributing electricity. And the reason for that, they said, was because CMP didn't get a great enough yield on profit, and therefore they couldn't attract bonds in the bond market to pay for all their facilities and what their proposals were. And after dinner, I was tired that day. We had hearings and everything, like you're sitting through these long ones. And then the hearing came a few days later. And I was chairing the committee, and insidious things come when you have your lobbyists are friendly with legislators, legislators with lobbyists, but Harold Pacious came up from Freddie Bellevaux, and he said, Senator Trotsky and members of this committee, Central Maine Power Company is in the business of generating electricity. That's why they were created, and the Public Utilities Commission is the regulator, and they don't belong in hair salons or any other businesses and so on. And I realized how insidious it is that legislators can be influenced by friendships with lobbyists because you all live together, and lobbyists are good people too. But anyway, we killed that bill unanimously in the legislature. I want to divert for a second and say that Central Maine Power Company, if it wasn't for Harris Station, there would be, in my opinion, no stable rafting industry. They built it. They also, by eminent domain, got hold of the land along the sides of the river and up, because they were concerned about flooding and they wanted to limit their liability. So in the end, my belief is that Central Maine Power Company, although it's the enemy in this hearing, basically protected that river for many, many years by getting hold of the land along the river and also creating a dam. Now I want to make clear that I'm against the fragmentation of northwestern Maine woods, and as far as the Kennebec Gorge, I guided on it for 13 years for Northern Outdoors and the 12 miles, and in my opinion, a utility line does not belong going over the gorge. And it is any, quote, mitigation, which I understand, if I believe correctly, someone correct me, at a hearing with LURC and with, not LURC, LUPC and DEP, I think they're not going to consider the mitigation issue at all, in any which way. I believe that's correct, I'm not so certain. But anyway, my concern is here is this concept of the mitigation issue, because when I got involved in this, heard about it, everybody was saying it's a done deal. It's a done deal, they're going to get this thing through, and therefore everybody should get as much money out of it as possible. Well, the thing is that mitigation, they went to key rafters, and they sold the gorge out for $22 million. Now, any Maine guide with any integrity would not sell out the East Branch of the Kennebec River for any money. It's unique, and also the Kennebec River doesn't belong just to the people in this room. The Kennebec River belongs to all the people. When I was a legislator, when I first got in there, I served 4 terms in the majority party in the Senate, always chaired committees, chaired natural resources, public utilities, education for a while. But I lose my train of thought here, excuse me, 78 years old. It happens sometimes. It's hard to keep away. Where's I at now? Somebody help me. I just the legislator.
Chair committees.
What?
You chaired committees.
Committees, yeah. I'm trying to get at something. Oh yes, okay. When I got into the legislature, to be very honest with you, I didn't know how to vote. I knew on the sexy issues, you know, whether it was gun control or abortion. Everybody figures those issues out. But you have thousands of bills, and the first thing I thought of, well, you can vote for what's good for you to get reelected, or you can vote, and that means you vote for the crowds, wherever the loudest noise is. Or you can vote for the people of Bangor. I'm a resident of Bangor. But I said to myself, I'm a state senator. And I close my eyes and say, I listen to both sides. And there are valid arguments, usually in most issues, on both sides. So to make my life simple, I said, it's an honor to be in the Maine Senate, and I'm going to listen to both sides until the end, then close my eyes and say, what's best for the people of Maine, from Kittery to Fort Kent, from Vanceboro to Rumford. And when I made those decisions, I was always predicted that I would lose the next election, because all you do is make enemies, because you alienate people. But the most important person in this room is you, Mr. Davis, because there's a lot of pressure. The state of Maine has a strong environmental